A second kindergarten centre is slapped with a $5,000 fine and its license reduced to just 6 months over the ill treatment of children. Authorities saying they have found kindergarten failed to oversee its centre's staff effectively.
For more, we are joined now in the studio by Charmaine Teo. She's Vice President of the Association of Early Childhood Educators Singapore. Good evening to you, Ms. Teo. Thank you for joining us here today.
Yes.
So first of all, let's talk about how far these actions go to addressing what's happened. We've got the $5,000 fine per centre, slashing of the licensing period to 6 months versus the previous 3 months, and plus other measures as well. The proportionality of these penalties, do they serve as sufficient deterrents? That's what people at home will want to know.
Well, the measures that are actually being taken are well within the powers under the Code of Practice. The media release by ACTA actually indicates that the provisions will be looked at. So I think that's a hint of there's more to come.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Dawn was talking about deterrent. So in fact, I suppose in a way, when you punish someone, that is a deterrent for anyone who might think of doing the same in the future. But what other measures could we be looking at which are more preventive rather than, I suppose, prosecutional or punitive?
So I think that's a great question. We can look at it on both sides of the equation. We can look at preventative strategies and we can look at punitive strategies. What we're looking at currently is punitive because it's after the fact. But when we look at preventative strategies, we're looking at things like the Code of Ethics, where we look at best practices, where we inspire educators to practice best practices within their workplace for the best interest of the child. So these would be, we would look at more of how we can prevent such things from happening again. Yeah.
There may be those who will ask why we didn't have those sort of more clearly understood in the first place. And it goes to question how much training and knowledge in terms of gaps we may have in our early childhood education sector. Are those gaps significant? And I mean, how far do they continue to put our children at risk?
Well, I think this is a good time for all of us to see and acknowledge that there are certain gaps and that we can always improve. There has been the Code of Practice that's been in place by ACTA. There's also the Code of Ethics that's in place by ACES. These are punitive and preventative pieces of documents that guide the profession. So to answer your question, if we had to acknowledge that there's a gap, then the gap really is that we need more continuing education and we need more refreshers for educators at all stages of their teaching journey, just so that we can also understand the complex situations that meet not just the parents, but also the educators, the operators, and everyone in a childcare environment.
All right, so for me, there's a slight gap between, because earlier you're saying you need to be inspiring educators to want to be a teacher, which is a real profession, it's not just a job.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you want to continuing education, you want to refresh. So that's teaching. So that's teaching someone skills. And then there's making someone feel they want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Can you teach someone to feel that way?
Well, I think that comes under cultivating teacher dispositions. That's something that the profession, or rather the association, advocates strongly for educators, to have a teacher disposition of care and concern, which is the number one thing that we want to always have a teacher have, right? And then the second thing that we also want to advocate for is joyful learning environments. Because when we have these learning environments, then adult misbehavior will not happen. So when we talk about joyful learning environments, we're talking about environments for not just children, but for the adults as well. So
all right, so everyone is inspired. Thanks so much for joining us. Ms. Charmaine Teo, Vice President of the Association of Early Childhood Educators, Singapore.